Very few things make me cry these days. These hot and cumbersome drops are precious to me in their rarity, and in a time where there is so much to cry about, perhaps that which elicits such a response from me should be all the more cherished. So let's talk about something that made me cry. Let's talk about the game Sable. Sable is a non-violent, open-world buffet-style experience. Gliding along, drinking in the sights and sounds until something piques your interest, you jump off your bike, explore, and repeat to your heart's content. To facilitate this gameplay loop, there is a decent selection of quests, but unlike other games in the open world space, there is not a narrative through line or main quest in Sable. The main quest, as it is to figure out the types of quests and actions that are your favorite, and then choose a corresponding mask for Sable to don for the rest of her life as a chosen profession. Sable also has some narratively focused quests that are interesting. These quests work cooperatively with your actions to form the game's narrative. It's a classic coming-of-age story that is told in a way I find to be thoroughly unique, in a medium where player-generated narratives are either ignored or exclude any authored story as a complement. There are dungeons to explore, mini-games to play, fetch quests aplenty, and surprisingly empathetic dialogue to be had. As a player, you can climb on almost any surface, glide through the air, and collect what is to be found in the world. All this is interspersed with rides from place to place on Simoon, Sable's customizable hoverbike. There are shops to spend your money or sell your findings, and many mysteries to uncover. Though there is content aplenty, the main goal, if you wish to finish the game, is to find various badges. Each badge corresponds with a type of mask, and 3 alike badges can be exchanged for a mask of their type. Once the first mask is acquired, you can go back to the start of the game and finish it if you wish, or you may try and get every mask the game has to offer, assuming the game lets you. We'll get to that part later. The game gives you a world and asks you, quite literally, what you want from it. That is the core premise of Sable. With its cel-shaded graphics, simplified forms, and vibrant color palettes, Sable is a visual delight. Its real-time shadows, day-night cycle, and distance-based color fading work in concert with the artistic style to bring this world to life. I personally found it all to be quite charming, but its functionality does suffer for artistic ambition. Some areas become almost black with packed edge detail, while the shape of large monolithic structures can be difficult to parse without much visual information to go off of. There were also some questionable decisions, like how smoke and dust are completely opaque, leading to some frustrating visibility issues, at least for me. On a brighter note, the sense of distance and scale are excellently portrayed by the visuals, important in a game that prioritizes exploration as much as Sable does. The animation is a fair bit more utilitarian. It's jerky and unrefined in most places, seemingly at its roughest during the sparse few cutscenes that are to be found here. I got used to most of these rough animations after some amount of time, though I still would have preferred a more smoothed out visual experience to match the relaxed vibes of the rest of the game. While it may struggle technically, Sable's art direction is something to behold. The game does a remarkable job of emulating the style of Mobius, looking like it was ripped straight from the oeuvre Voyage d'Hermès. Despite this, I would hardly call the work derivative, though there is certainly an argument to be had here with the plethora of sci-fi tropes that Sable leans on for the visual component to its storytelling. Massive skeletons strewed about the sands, large sandworms with radial maws covered in teeth, geometric forerunner structures with circuit-like light patterning. It seems to me that Sable draws more inspiration from sci-fi that is outside of the video game space. This has the effect of feeling fresh while still leaning so heavily on these tried and true tropes of the genre. The character design does bring a lot of creative freshness to the game and translates nicely into the many outfits you can collect in the game, often inspired by the clothes worn by various professions of the denizens of the game. Fashion and player expression are by no means a large part of the game, but effort was certainly put in here to accentuate the theme of experimentation and self-discovery. With a soundtrack by Japanese Breakfast, Sable's soundscape meshes beautifully with its hopefully desolate visual art direction. There were even a few moments in the game that were made sublime by a gentle and melodic verse. The ambience is no slouch either, with piercing winds, bubbling waterways, and creaking bones. The whole game is lousy with sounds to accent the unique environments strewn about the world. It's clear a lot of care and effort went into the sound design, from differently resonating footfalls on the myriad of materials you can walk on, to the change in your character's grunts and breathing if you wear a sealed helmet instead of a mask, to the sound of liquid sloshing when wearing a suit with a canteen on it, the sound of the map clicking away as you scroll, or the victorious chimes when finding items, reminiscent reminiscent of Zelda, add to the calming soundscape, and make the sound in the game beautiful and full of texture. It's a shame most of my biggest complaints are about this game's sound, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Mechanically, Sable was surprisingly difficult for me to categorize. It does not do anything out of left field here, nor does it combine a wide swath of mechanics from disparate genres, but its difficulty in categorization comes down to its omissions. There is no combat in Sable, and with that, it's lost a lot of those supporting systems like potions, crafting, or item degradation that many similar open world games have. This game is a pure adventure game. The remaining gameplay systems that have survived this gameplay focus are climbing, basic puzzle solving, and item collection. The climbing is what I found myself doing most often other than getting from point A to point B. There is a fast travel system once you've found a location, but I tend to avoid those. Too many bad experiences in the past, you know? The climbing in this game is fairly reminiscent of Breath of the Wild's climbing mechanics, which is no surprise as the developers cited that as a major influence. Unfortunately, Sable falls short of its inspiration. The climbing is mostly functional, but my enjoyment of the mechanic wore down quite quickly. Besides climbing, there are also a fair amount of puzzles in Sable, and I loved them. Mind you, I tend to dislike puzzles, but these were a nice balance between too easy as to be frustrating time wasters and so hard that I had to look it up and now I feel dumb. There are also a fair amount of collectibles in the game, which is a lovely mechanic paired with the exploratory focus here. You collect bike parts for your hover bike, clothes for your aesthetic, money or things that can be sold, and eggs that will give you more stamina while climbing. These eggs are really a must if you wish to complete some of the more challenging climbs in the game. But the biggest climb of all in Sable is the growth of Sable herself, and through her, yourself. You start out as an adolescent girl from a small nomadic village that is about to embark on her society's rite of passage for entering adulthood. This passage, known as the gliding, will end with her making a choice on what path to spend her adult life. A classic coming-of-age story told through the tragically uncommon view of a girl embracing womanhood through a lens of helpfulness, mastery, and finding joy in a desolate world. The world Sable finds herself in is something of a sci-fi fantasy post-apocalypse. I'll get more into this later, but for now, no spoilers. For her gliding, she is given a hover bike and told to go out into the world and find out who she is. In this world, who you are is your identity, as every single character wears a mask to denote their path in life. It might be a machinist's mask that denotes your skill in working with old technology and a general desire to learn the secrets of the world, or maybe that of the scrapper, who collects from the wrecks of old to build the world anew. It's in this context that Sable leaves her people to find herself out in the world. And, if you wish to avoid spoilers, skip to here. Alright, let's jump into this. Sable is a descendant of the crew of a crass spaceship sent to her planet to terraform it for corporate interests. The crew eventually give up on repairing their ships, and since they are unable to get any long-range signals out, they begin the terraforming process so their kids might have a chance at a life here. The radiation leaks from the wreck and the toxic atmosphere lead to all crew having to wear masks when outdoors, which neatly explains the social practice of mask wearing all these centuries later. Despite the world being presumably safe as it's teeming with life, and most masks appear to be aesthetic, not functional. All of this world building is given in my favorite questline in the game, historical reconnection. You find chat logs left in the bridges of many crashed spaceships in the game's various biomes, and I think it added so much context that I could not leave it out when discussing the narrative. With that in mind, the other story beats in Sable are not as linear. You can meet up with the old retired city guard Elizabeth, who is reliving her gliding days by visiting all the places she missed in her youth. You can do small fetch quests for her, and she'll reward you with the 3 feathers necessary to build your guard mask. One of these quests is to gather psychedelic mushrooms for the retired guard, a fun little incongruity that got a smile from me. The relationship between Sable and Elizabeth is full of enthusiasm as Sable gobbles up the wisdom of a woman who has led a full life but is determined not to let her earlier choices define her. This theme runs deep in the vignettes of Sable. The game appears on the outside to reinforce that we are what we do, and that we are trapped into the life choices we choose. But despite being in a world that is functionally that exact premise, the characters of Sable are constantly reminding Sable that the mask she chooses is just one choice, and there is a world of choices to be made after that can define her however she wishes. The game goes to great lengths to characterize on top of or against the stereotypes it builds, as well as the ones we bring with us. A particularly powerful moment for me was an early quest where I needed to trade 3 beetles for a bike component to a younger girl in my village. The beginning of the quest made it clear that this girl was was always getting on Sable's nerves, and as the quest was pretty frustrating, I was upset at the girl and definitely caught by the annoying young girl trope. But as you give her the beetles, she tearily gives you the component and reveals that she was just trying in her own way to keep you from leaving, as she can't bear the thought of you not being there with her. Sable truly succeeds at something. It's how quickly and efficiently it can get you to empathize with its colorful cast of characters, despite its word count for each character interaction being so low. I even found myself looking forward to interactions with a worm queen that lives in a mountain for more than just her lovely ability to cry on me to give me more stamina. What? This game and its characters ooze humanity in how they interact with you. Nothing is overly dramatic or formal, and I felt like I got a tiny glimpse of real people, as opposed to most games that seem to give me a dictionary on each of their paper-thin characters. Not to be too harsh, I love a lot of those games for what they are. Once you've had your fill of Sable and have collected at least one mask, you can travel back to your people and make your final choice. There is a beauty to this scene as you share stories of your adventures with your family and loved ones, and ask them what they think about your options. The choice is very much left up to you to be made in the temple where you started your gliding, surrounded by the statues that were once bare but now festooned with all the masks you were able to gather on your journey. You make your choice and the game ends with a beautiful refrain. And, for me anyways, tears in the corner of my eyes, feeling like I was the one who went on this journey of self-discovery. This next bit is something I struggle with how to contextualize the most. It's difficult to critique a game that had such an emotional impact on me. With that context in mind, this game is one of the most frustrating games I have ever played. It's a broken mess. Climbing up things with rounded corners or heavy slopes leaves Sable spamming her climb over ledge animation. Climbing on moving surfaces barely works until it just doesn't. It's far less clear than it should be what surfaces can be clambered up and what surfaces are too smooth to hold on to. Riding your hover bike is more of a hassle than it is a freeing experience due to how unresponsive and unpredictable it can be. The camera is quite fond of clipping through geometry or entire walls, leaving you no way to see what you're doing. Object pop-in is bad, but even worse when the objects that are close to you regularly disappear, even objects you're climbing on. I had to make more than one leap of faith to an object I thought was there just to climb an empty space with no visual reference to gauge against my diminishing stamina. The performance of the game is almost universally choppy and sluggish at the same time. There are areas in the game where the sound is so broken that I couldn't even tell you what the sounds that were playing were supposed to be because of how often they cut out and desynced with what was happening on screen. This is a major problem in an exploration-based game, as I avoided these areas like the plague. One of my least favorite things with the sound is the game's fondness for constantly replaying sound effects at random. There was a tower I raised out of the ground early on in my playthrough, and the slow and dramatic sound it played for that just kept playing every few minutes for the remaining 20 hours I spent with the game. I now hate that sound. Another major issue I ran into in the most interesting quest in the game, and a quest that is needed to get at least one of the masks, just completely broke. It's clear it was one of the most fleshed out quests on offer, with a fun detective subplot, but after exhausting my ability to figure things out on my own, I had to Google the solution, just to find out one of the characters never reacted to something in my inventory. Because of this, I was never able to open the literal door to the remainder of the quest. This hurt. Worse than I thought it might too. The way this game works doesn't require this or really any quest to be completed to beat the game, but I was one mask away from 100%ing this game. I slogged through the frustration of a broken game just to be stopped by an impassable barrier. There's also a wealth of small things that got under my skin. Very forgivable if the rest of the game worked, but now they're salt in the cuts. Here's a small list. When gathering choom eggs, an important item in the game, it will tell you the total number you've collected, not the total number in your inventory. It's a little thing, but if you need 20 of these, then it's frustrating to try to remember how many I've already traded in and subtract that from the total it shows. Whenever I loaded a save, it changed my mask to the first mask you get. Again, a small annoyance, but it left a bad taste in my mouth every time I resumed my playthrough. I could keep going, but you get the point. I did check to see if these issues were just a problem I was running into, and while I can't confirm my specific issues are common, a host of reviews for this game mention its bugs and instability, with audio issues seeming to be a common complaint. I'm not sure how to transition out of this, so here goes nothing. I recently came out as non-binary, and it's been more of a struggle than I imagined it would be. I was harassed at work until I was forced to quit. This was right after I had cut ties with both of my parents due to their constant bigotry and refusal to admit to the harm that caused me. I'm not telling you about my woes for pity, but for context. I want to recommend this game so badly, despite its numerous flaws, but I want to do that because of who I am, and to what this game means to me. The second character you meet in the game is non-binary. No fanfare, no in-game commentary. Just a they-them being a valuable part of the community Sable grew up in. I know they aren't the first non-binary representation in games, but it's the first instance I have run across, and this is followed soon after by a short but powerful conversation with Sable's mother figure, Juddy, who stresses that no matter what choices Sable makes, she will have nothing but love and support, even if those choices lead to Sable leaving her people to pursue what she needs for herself. This is what broke me, a recent discovery of part of who I am that led to me losing my relationship with both my parents was shown as a normal part of a beautiful world. And for that I can forgive all the rough and missing edges in the game, but I'm not sure who else would. Sable does more than this. There are powerful and empathetic women throughout the world of Sable. Women who are not defined by their sexual value to male characters or their ability to perform a traditional female role. Hell, unless I missed it, the majority of characters Sable interacts with are women. Women are guards, engineers, hunters, craftspeople, leaders. The world of Sable is a world I would love to live in, despite its harsh desert sands and chemical wastes. It may not be a world you would like to play in, though. Anyways, thanks for listening to me ramble. It's been a real pleasure, folks. Take it easy when you can.